Captain Marcus Chen stared at the red planet through his ship's small window. Thyros Prime looked angry from space with its rust-colored surface and dark storm clouds. His hands gripped the control stick tighter than usual. This was not going to be an easy mission. The diplomatic vessel Harmony was small compared to the massive warships that usually visited this part of space. Marcus had chosen it on purpose. He wanted the Catherians to see that he came in peace, not war. The ship carried no weapons, just supplies and one very special item. In the cargo hold, wrapped in protective cloth, lay a Catherian sword. Marcus had found it 3 months ago in the wreckage of an old ship floating near Earth's moon. The blade was beautiful and deadly looking, with strange symbols carved into its metal surface. Earth scientists had studied it for weeks before declaring it safe to handle. They said it was very old and probably very important to Catherian culture. This could be our chance, Admiral Hayes had told Marcus before he left Earth. The Catherians respect strength and honor. Returning their sacred weapon might show them that humans can be trusted. Marcus hoped the Admiral was right. The Catherian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for decades. They conquered world after world, adding each victory to their collection. Earth's diplomats had tried to make contact many times, but the Catherians saw humans as weak. They called them soft flesh and children playing with metal ships. The ship's computer beeped softly. "Approaching Theros Prime atmosphere," it announced in its calm voice. Catherian vessels detected. Marcus looked at his scanner. 3 large warships moved toward him like hunting animals. Each one could destroy his little ship with a single shot. His heart beat faster, but he kept his hands steady on the controls. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of Earth," he spoke into his radio. "I come seeking audience with your commanders. I carry something that belongs to your people." Static filled the radio for several minutes. Then a harsh voice answered in broken English. "Human ship. You will land at coordinates we sent. Any sudden moves and you die." The coordinates appeared on his screen. Marcus programmed them into his navigation system and began his descent toward the planet's surface. The ship shook as it entered the atmosphere. Red dust swirled around his windows, making it hard to see. The landing zone was a flat area near a large military camp. As Marcus set his ship down, he could see hundreds of Catherian warriors moving around the camp. They were tall creatures, at least 7 feet high, with thick scales covering their bodies. Their skin was dark green and brown, perfect for blending into the rocky landscape of their world. Marcus took a deep breath and stood up from his pilot seat. He walked to the cargo hold and carefully picked up the wrapped sword. Even through the cloth, he could feel that it was warm. The scientists on Earth had mentioned this, but feeling it himself was different. The warmth seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. He put on his diplomatic uniform and checked his translator device one more time. The machine would help him speak Catherian language, though most of their warriors knew some English. Marcus clipped a small white flag to his belt to show he came in peace. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. Hot air rushed in, carrying the smell of dust and metal. Marcus stepped out onto the red ground and immediately felt the weight of many eyes watching him. Catherian warriors stood in formation around his ship, their weapons ready but not pointed at him. These warriors looked even more impressive up close. Their armor was made of thick metal plates that covered their scaled skin. Each warrior carried multiple weapons, swords, spears, and strange energy guns that hummed with power. Scars marked their faces and arms, each one probably representing a battle won or an enemy defeated. Marcus walked forward slowly, holding the wrapped sword in both hands. His boots crunched on the rocky ground. The Catherian warriors watched him but did not move. He could hear them talking in their harsh language, but his translator was not close enough to pick up their words. A path opened in front of him, leading toward the center of the camp. Marcus followed it, keeping his movements slow and respectful. Catherian banners fluttered in the hot wind above his head. The banners showed symbols of conquest and victory, reminding everyone who saw them of the Empire's power. The path led to a large tent made of dark metal and leather. Guards stood on both sides of the entrance, their weapons gleaming in the red sunlight. As Marcus approached, the tent flaps opened and a figure stepped out. War Duchess Zarath was clearly the leader of this camp. She was taller than the other warriors and moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. Her armor was more decorated than the others, with gold and silver designs showing her high rank. Scars covered the visible parts of her face and arms, but these were not random marks. They formed patterns that Marcus recognized from his studies, ceremonial scars that Cytherians gave themselves after great victories. Zareth's eyes were the color of dark amber, and they fixed on Marcus with the intensity of a predator studying prey. She spoke in English, her voice deep and commanding. "So the soft flesh finally sends someone to speak with us," she said. "You are very small, human. Are you sure you are a warrior?" Marcus bowed his head respectfully. "I am Captain Marcus Chen, representing Earth and humanity. I come not as a warrior, but as a friend who wishes to return something precious to your people." Several Cytherian warriors laughed at his words. The sound was harsh and mocking. Zareth raised her hand and the laughter stopped immediately. "Show me this precious thing," she commanded. Marcus lifted the wrapped sword higher. "This blade was found in space near our world. Our scholars believe it is sacred to your people. I have traveled far to return it to you as a sign of respect and friendship." Zareth's expression changed. Her eyes focused on the wrapped bundle with new interest. She stepped closer and Marcus could smell the metal and leather of her armor. "Unwrap it," she ordered. Marcus carefully pulled away the protective cloth. The sword gleamed in the red light of Thyros Prime's sun. Its blade was silver metal that seemed to glow with its own inner fire. The handle was carved with symbols that twisted and curved like living things. Even Marcus, who knew nothing about weapons, could see that this was something special. Gasps came from the warriors around them. Several took steps backward. Zareth's eyes widened, and for the first time since Marcus had met her, she looked surprised. "That cannot be," she whispered in her own language. Then louder in English, "Where did you find this?" "Floating in space," Marcus replied honestly. "We believed it should be returned to its rightful owners." Zareth stared at the sword for a long moment. Then she looked at Marcus with new eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. "Do you know what you carry, human?" Marcus shook his head. "Only that it belongs to your people." "That sword has been lost for 300 years, Zareth said slowly. "It is Solrend, forged by the ancient weapon masters. Legend says it chooses its own bearer." Marcus held the sword toward her with both hands. "Then it should return to Cytherian hands." As his fingers adjusted their grip on the handle to present it properly, the sword suddenly erupted in brilliant energy. Pain shot through Marcus's hands like fire and lightning combined. The blade burned him through his gloves and he could smell his own flesh cooking. But Marcus did not let go. The pain was like nothing Marcus had ever felt before. The sword's handle burned through his protective gloves as if they were made of paper. The smell of cooking flesh filled the air around him. His hands shook and every nerve in his body screamed at him to drop the weapon and run. But Marcus held on. The Cytherian warriors stepped back in shock. Their faces showed fear and amazement. Even the mighty War Duchess Zareth took 2 steps away from the burning human. In all their long history of war and conquest, they had never seen anything like this. "Drop it, you fool," Zareth shouted. "The blade will kill you." Marcus gritted his teeth against the agony. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with tears of pain. His hands were already blistered and smoking, but he refused to let go. He had come here to return this sword as a gesture of peace. He would complete his mission no matter what it cost him. The energy from the sword grew brighter. Marcus could feel it searching through him, like invisible fingers poking at his mind and soul. The ancient weapon was testing him, measuring something that had nothing to do with physical strength. It wanted to know who he really was, deep inside where no one else could see. "Why does he not release it?" one warrior whispered to another in Cytherian language. Marcus's translator caught the words through his pain. "I do not know," came the reply. "No one has ever held Solren for more than a few seconds." The pain should have dropped him by now. Zareth circled around Marcus, studying him like a scientist examining a strange new creature. Her amber eyes were wide with disbelief. The scars on her face seemed to glow in the sword's energy. "Human," she called out. "That blade nearly killed me when I first tried to claim it as a young warrior. I have the scars to prove it." "What makes you think you can succeed where I failed?" Marcus tried to answer, but the pain stole his breath. The sword's energy was changing now, shifting from pure hostile fire to something more complex. It felt like the weapon was having an argument with itself, testing different judgments about the strange creature that held it. The blade had been created centuries ago by the greatest Cytherian weapon masters. They had poured not just metal and energy into its forging, but the spiritual essence of their most honored warriors. Solrend was designed to choose leaders. to find those worthy of commanding others in battle. It tested strength, courage, and the will to dominate enemies. But Marcus Chen was giving it something it had never encountered before. The human was strong, yes. His grip never weakened despite the terrible pain. He was brave, certainly. Lesser beings would have fainted from the agony by now. But there was something else, something that confused the ancient intelligence in the blade. Marcus was not trying to dominate anything. He felt no desire to conquer or destroy. The sword searched his mind and found only a simple wish to return a lost object to its rightful owners. Even through excruciating torture, the human's primary emotion was concern that he might fail in his peaceful mission. This made no sense to a weapon forged for war. Impossible, Zareth breathed. She had seen many warriors try to claim Solrend over the years. All of them were driven by ambition, by the desire to prove their strength and gain power over others. The sword had rejected them all, burning them until they dropped it and fled. But this human held different motivations entirely. The blade's ancient programming struggled to process what it was experiencing. How could someone be strong without seeking strength? How could someone endure suffering without wanting to cause suffering in return? Marcus's vision began to blur from the pain. Red spots danced in front of his eyes. His legs shook, threatening to collapse under him. But still he held the sword. Still he tried to complete the gesture of offering it to Zareth. The gathered warriors watched in stunned silence. Some of them had legends passed down from their grandfathers about the old days, when Solrend had chosen the first great war dukes of their people. But those stories seemed like children's tales compared to what they were witnessing now. He should be dead, one young warrior whispered. The blade should have burned through his bones by now. Look at his hands, another replied. They are destroyed, but he does not let go. What kind of creature is this human? Zareth heard their whispers and felt the same confusion they did. In her 50 years of life, she had never seen anything that challenged her understanding of strength so completely. Catherians measured worth through the ability to defeat enemies and take what they wanted by force. It was the natural way of the universe. Yet here stood this small, soft human, demonstrating a kind of power that her people had no words for. The sword's energy began to pulse in a different rhythm. The hostile burning was being replaced by something else, something almost like curiosity. The weapon's ancient intelligence was adapting, learning, trying to understand this new kind of bearer. Marcus felt the change immediately. The pain was still there, still terrible, but now it came in waves instead of a constant assault. Between the waves, he could sense something else from the blade. It was no longer trying to drive him away. Instead, it seemed to be testing him in a different way, asking questions he did not fully understand. "What are you?" Zareth asked, stepping closer again. Her voice was softer now, filled with wonder instead of command. Marcus managed to speak through gritted teeth. "Just a man trying to do the right thing." "The right thing?" Zareth repeated the words as if they were foreign concepts. "You speak of right and wrong as if they matter more than strength." "They do," Marcus gasped. Blood was beginning to seep through his ruined gloves. "Strength without purpose is just destruction." The sword pulsed again, and this time Marcus felt something like approval flow through the blade. The ancient weapon was beginning to understand. This human did not seek to dominate others, but he was willing to dominate himself, to force himself through impossible pain for the sake of others. It was a kind of strength the weapon masters had never considered when they forged Solrend centuries. "Go, he speaks truth," an old warrior said from the crowd. "Look how the blade responds to him now." Indeed, the sword's glow was changing from angry red to something closer to golden sunlight. The energy still burned, but it no longer felt purely hostile. It was becoming something else, something that tested Marcus's resolve rather than trying to break it. "This cannot be happening," Zareth muttered. She had spent her entire life believing that might made right, that the strong naturally ruled the weak. Her scars were proof of her dedication to that philosophy. Every mark on her body represented an enemy defeated, a world conquered, a victory claimed through superior force. But the sacred sword of her ancestors was accepting this human who rejected everything her culture stood for. Marcus took a shaking step forward, still holding the burning blade. His legs were barely supporting him, but he was determined to complete his task. He extended the sword toward Zareth, offering it to her despite the agony it was causing him. "Please," he whispered. Take it. It belongs with your people. Zareth stared at the offered weapon. The human's hands were barely recognizable as hands anymore, burned and blistered beyond healing. Yet still he held the blade steady. Still he tried to give it away rather than claim it for himself. You could keep it, she said slowly. Solrend has chosen you. By the laws of our ancestors, it is yours by right. Marcus shook his head weakly. I did not come here to take anything. I came to give back what was lost. The sword pulsed one final time, and suddenly the burning stopped completely. The blade's glow faded to a gentle warmth, and Marcus felt the weapon's acceptance flow through him like cool water on a hot day. He had passed the test, but not in any way the sword's creators had ever imagined. The silence that followed was complete. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as Marcus stood there, trembling but victorious, holding the now quiet sword. His burned hands could barely feel the weapon anymore, but he continued to offer it to War Duchess Zareth. She stared at him with eyes that had seen 1,000 battles, but nothing like this. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took Solrend from his ruined hands. The blade came to her easily, showing none of the hostile fire it had unleashed on Marcus. It seemed almost docile now, like a wild animal that had been tamed. Medic! Zareth barked suddenly, remembering that the human was badly injured. Attend to his hands immediately. 2 Catherian healers rushed forward with medical supplies. They wrapped Marcus's burned hands in cooling bandages while he swayed on his feet. The pain was finally catching up with him now that the sword's trial was over. Sit down before you fall down, one of the medics ordered in broken English. Marcus gratefully sank to his knees on the red ground. While the medics worked, Zareth examined Solrend more closely. The blade looked exactly as it had in the old pictures and stories. But something about it felt different now. Changed. The sword had been awakened by its encounter with the human, and that awakening had altered it in ways she did not yet understand. War Duchess, called out Captain Thakmore, her second in command. What are your orders regarding the human? Zareth looked up from the sword to see her entire camp watching her. Word of what had happened was already spreading among the warriors. She could see the confusion and wonder in their faces. Some of them looked frightened, as if they had witnessed something that challenged everything they believed about the universe. Send messages to all nearby camps, she ordered. Tell them what we have seen here today. Tell them that Solrend has returned, and that it accepted a human bearer. War Duchess, Thakmore said carefully. Perhaps we should report this to High Command first. They will want to know about the humans' unusual abilities. Zareth considered this. High Command would indeed want to know about Marcus, but probably not for good reasons. They would see him as a threat to be eliminated or a tool to be used. Neither option sat well with her after what she had just witnessed. The camps will hear of this first, she decided. Let the warriors know that we have seen something new today, something that does not fit our old understanding. As the medical treatment continued, Marcus began to regain some of his strength. The Catherian healing methods were very effective, though his hands would bear scars for the rest of his life. He looked up at the warriors, surrounding him, and saw something he had not expected to see in their fierce faces. Respect. It was not the kind of respect that Catherians usually showed to conquered enemies or defeated opponents. This was something deeper, more uncertain. These warriors had spent their entire lives believing that strength came through domination, but Marcus had shown them a different kind of strength entirely. Young warrior Kessela was the first to voice what many of them were thinking. War Duchess, she said, stepping forward. My grandmother used to tell stories about the ancient prophecies. She said that someday a flesh-bearer from the void would come to show us a new path. Other warriors began to nod and murmur agreement. The old stories had been largely forgotten in recent generations, dismissed as primitive superstition. But seeing Marcus endure Solrend's trial had brought those half-remembered legends rushing back to mind. The prophecy spoke of one who would have strength without conquest, added veteran Draktar. Power without domination. I thought such things were impossible until today. Zareth listened to her warriors with growing unease. She had always been proud of Catherian culture and traditions. Their way of life had brought them victory after victory, expanding their empire across dozens of star systems. But now she was beginning to wonder if victory and conquest were the only measures of success. Marcus struggled to his feet, his bandaged hands making balance difficult. I am honored by your attention, he said to the assembled warriors. But I am not anyone special. I am just a human who wanted to return something that did not belong to him. Just a human, repeated Kessela wonderingly. If you are just a human, then what does that say about humans in general? This question sent a ripple of whispers through the crowd. The Catherians had always dismissed humans as weak and unworthy of respect. But if this ordinary human could do something that their greatest warriors could not, then perhaps they had been wrong about his entire species. War Duchess, called out another voice from the crowd. If the human speaks truth about returning lost property, then perhaps humans understand honor in ways we have not considered. Zareth found herself in an impossible situation. Everything she had been taught told her that might made right, that the strong naturally ruled the weak. But Marcus had demonstrated a kind of strength that did not rely on defeating others. He had conquered the unconquerable sword not through superior force but through superior purpose. What do you believe, human? She asked Marcus directly. What drives your people to act like this? Marcus thought carefully before answering. His hands throbbed with pain, but his mind was clear. We believe that true strength comes from helping others, not hurting them. We think that the greatest victory is when everyone wins, not when someone loses. Several warriors laughed at this, but the laughter was uncertain, not mocking. They had just seen this philosophy in action, and it had achieved something that pure aggression could not. Everyone wins? Thakmor asked. How is such a thing possible? In any conflict, there must be winners and losers. Not all conflicts need to be solved through fighting, Marcus replied. Sometimes the best victory is finding a way for both sides to get what they really need. Soft thinking, muttered one of the older warriors. But even he did not sound entirely convinced. Young Kisila stepped closer to Marcus. You said you came here to return something lost. But you have given us more than just a sword. You have given us new ideas to think about. Dangerous ideas, Thakmor warned. Ideas that could weaken us. Or ideas that could make us stronger in ways we never imagined, Kessela countered. The argument spread through the crowd of warriors. Some clung to the old ways, insisting that strength through conquest was the only path to success. Others began to wonder if Marcus's approach might offer possibilities they had never considered. Zareth watched this debate with growing alarm. Her warriors were supposed to be united in their dedication to the Empire's expansion. Division in the ranks was a serious problem that could threaten their military effectiveness. But as she listened to both sides, she found herself drawn more and more to the questions the young warriors were asking. What if there were other kinds of strength? What if victory could be achieved without creating defeated enemies who would seek revenge? War Duchess, Marcus said quietly, interrupting her thoughts. I can see that my presence here is causing problems for you. Perhaps it would be better if I returned to my ship. Zareth looked at him with surprise. Even after everything that had happened, the human was still thinking about what would be best for others rather than himself. You would leave? She asked. Even though Solrend has accepted you? Even though you could claim the right to command here? Marcus smiled weakly. I told you I did not come here to take anything. My mission is complete. The sword is back where it belongs. But as he turned to go, several warriors stepped forward to block his path. Not to threaten him, but to stop him from leaving. Wait, Kessela said urgently. You cannot go yet. We have too many questions. Questions about what? About humans. About your ways. About whether there might be alternatives to endless war. Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him. These were warriors bred for conquest, trained from birth to seek victory through force. Yet many of them were looking at him with something that might have been hope. I will answer what questions I can, he said. But you should know that my people are not perfect. We make mistakes too. But you try to do better? Asked another young warrior. We try, Marcus agreed. Zareth made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Captain Chen, she said formally, I invite you to remain in our camp as an honored guest. There is much we could learn from each other. The invitation sent shockwaves through the assembled warriors. Some nodded approval while others looked scandalized. But none of them could deny that they had witnessed something unprecedented today. As the sun set over Thyros Prime, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, the seeds of a new understanding were planted in the minds of the Catherian warriors. Not all of them would accept the change that was coming, but enough would be touched by it to alter the future of both their species. The legend was awakening, and with it, the possibility of a different kind of strength. 3 days had passed since Marcus's trial with Solrend. and the Catherian military camp was no longer the disciplined war machine it had once been. Word of the humans' achievement had spread far beyond Zareth's immediate forces, carried by supply runners, communication officers, and wandering traders to camps across the planet. The reaction was swift and dramatic. Young warriors began arriving at Zareth's camp from other military units, claiming they wanted to see the human who had tamed the legendary sword. But Marcus could tell from their questions and their eager faces that they wanted more than just to witness a curiosity. They were searching for something they had never found in traditional Catherian culture. "Tell us again about this everyone wins idea," requested Veltar, a young scout who had traveled 2 days from the northern front. "My unit has been fighting the Zalani resistance for 8 months. We win every battle, but they keep coming back angrier than before. There has to be a better way." Marcus sat in the shade of Zareth's command tent, his bandaged hands resting carefully on his knees. The Catherian medics had done excellent work, but the scars would remain as permanent reminders of his encounter with Solrend. "Fighting only creates more fighting," Marcus explained patiently. "When you defeat someone by force, you may stop them for a while, but you also give them a reason to hate you. They will train harder, recruit more allies, and come back stronger. But if we do not fight, how do we get what we need?" asked Kessela, who had become one of Marcus's most devoted listeners. "By finding out what everyone really needs and then working together to get it," Marcus replied. "Most conflicts happen because both sides want the same limited resource. But often, if you look deeper, you find that they actually need different things." The gathered warriors listened intently. These conversations had been happening constantly since Marcus's arrival, and each one drew larger crowds. Veterans who had fought in dozens of campaigns sat next to new recruits, all of them hungry for alternatives to the endless cycle of conquest and rebellion. War Duchess Zareth watched these discussions with growing concern. She had given Marcus permission to stay as a gesture of respect, but she had not anticipated how quickly his ideas would spread among her troops. The unity that held her forces together was beginning to fracture along generational lines. The older warriors remained loyal to traditional Catherian values. They saw strength through conquest as the natural order of the universe, proven effective by centuries of military success. But many of the younger warriors were becoming fascinated by Marcus's philosophy of cooperation and mutual benefit. "War Duchess," Captain Thakmore approached her with obvious worry in his voice. "High Command has been asking questions about the unusual reports coming from our sector. They want to know why our efficiency ratings have dropped and why so many transfers are being requested." Zareth sighed heavily. The transfer requests were indeed a problem. Warriors from other units were asking to be reassigned to her command, while some of her own veteran troops were requesting transfers away. The military hierarchy was becoming confused and concerned. "What have you told them?" she asked. "Only that we are dealing with unusual circumstances involving the human ambassador," Thakmore replied carefully. "But they are running out of patience. Supreme War Duke Krelnax himself has demanded a full report." The mention of Krelnax's name sent a chill through Zareth. The Supreme War Duke was the highest military authority in the Catherian Empire, answering only to the Emperor himself. He was also known for his absolute dedication to traditional Catherian values and his hatred of anything that might weaken the military's effectiveness. "How long do we have?" Zareth asked. "His personal fleet will arrive within 2 days," Thakmore said grimly. "He is bringing a full investigation team and enough firepower to level this entire camp if he decides we have become compromised." Zareth felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Krelnax would not be coming just to investigate. He would be coming to eliminate what he saw as a threat to Catherian military discipline. That meant Marcus was in serious danger, along with anyone who had been influenced by his ideas. She looked across the camp to where the human sat surrounded by eager young warriors. He was demonstrating something with his hands, probably another of his cooperation exercises. The warriors were laughing, something that rarely happened in a military camp. They looked happier and more energetic than she had seen them in years. But happiness was not valued in Catherian military culture. Only victory mattered. "Gather the senior staff," Zareth ordered. "We need to discuss our options." 20 minutes later, Zareth's top officers were assembled in the command tent. The mood was tense as she explained the situation with Krelnax's impending arrival. "We have to get rid of the human, declared Major Korvex immediately. "Send him back to his ship and tell High Command that the situation has been resolved." "And what about the warriors who have been influenced by his ideas?" asked Captain Therishon. "Do we just pretend that never happened?" "We reassign the troublemakers to different units," Korvex replied. "Separate them before their soft thinking can spread further." Zarath listened to the debate with a heavy heart. The practical military solution was obvious, but it felt wrong in ways she could not fully express. Marcus had done nothing but try to help her people. Punishing him for that seemed like a betrayal of everything Solrend had revealed about his character. "There is another option," she said quietly. The officers fell silent, waiting for her to continue. "We could leave," Zarath said. "Those of us who have been affected by the humans' ideas could request reassignment to frontier duties. Take our warriors somewhere far from the core worlds, where we could explore these new concepts without interference." "That would be desertion," Thakmor pointed out. "High Command would hunt us down." "Not if we were still serving the Empire," Zarath replied. "Just serving it in a different way. There are dozens of unexplored systems beyond the current borders. We could establish new colonies, make contact with alien species, expand Catherian influence through means other than conquest." The suggestion hung in the air like smoke from a fire. It was radical, dangerous, and probably impossible. But it was also the only way to protect both Marcus and the warriors who had begun to follow his teachings. "You are talking about splitting the military," Major Korvex said in horror, "creating a faction that rejects traditional Catherian values." "I'm talking about evolution," Zarath countered. "About finding new ways to serve our people that do not require endless war." The debate that followed was heated and emotional. Some officers saw Zarath's proposal as treason, while others were intrigued by the possibilities it offered. The discussion might have continued for hours, but it was interrupted by urgent shouts from outside the tent. "War Duchess," a scout called out. "Priority message from Orbital Watch. Unknown ships approaching fast." Zarath rushed outside to see 3 of her communications officers clustered around their equipment. The lead officer looked up with a pale face. "Supreme War Duke Krelnax's fleet has arrived early," he reported. "They are demanding immediate landing clearance and ordering all personnel to assemble for inspection." Zarath felt time running out like sand through her fingers. In less than an hour, Krelnax would be on the ground with enough loyal troops to arrest or execute anyone he deemed a threat to military discipline. She looked across the camp to where Marcus still sat with his growing group of followers. The human seemed to sense her gaze and looked up, offering a small wave with his bandaged hand. He had no idea how much danger he was in. "War Duchess," Kessela appeared at her elbow. "What are your orders?" Zarath made a decision that would echo through galactic history. "Signal all units," she commanded. "Any warrior who wishes to accompany Captain Chen on a peaceful exploration mission is free to volunteer." "We depart in 30 minutes. Where are we going?" Thakmor asked. "Anywhere but here," Zarath replied. "We are going to find out if there really is a better way to be strong." The next 30 minutes were chaos. Warriors ran through the camp gathering supplies and equipment. Some were joining the exodus willingly, excited by the prospect of adventure and new ideas. Others were simply following their commanders out of loyalty, though they did not fully understand what was happening. Marcus found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. "I don't understand," he told Zarath as warriors loaded his ship with additional supplies. "What is going on?" "You have started something you cannot stop," Zarath replied grimly. "And now we must all live with the consequences." As the mixed fleet of human and Catherian vessels lifted off from Thyros Prime, they left behind everything they had known for the uncertain promise of something better. Behind them, Supreme War Duke Krelnax's forces landed to find an empty camp and a message that would infuriate the Catherian High Command. The message was simple: gone to find a new kind of victory. The pursuit began within hours of their escape from Thyros Prime. Supreme War Duke Krelnax was not the type of leader to let deserters escape unpunished, especially when they carried dangerous new ideas that could spread throughout the Empire. His war fleet was faster and more heavily armed than the mixed group of vessels following Marcus and Zarath. For 3 days, they played a deadly game of chase through the outer rim systems. Marcus's small diplomatic ship Harmony led the way, with Zarath's command vessel and 24 other Catherian ships following close behind. They were outnumbered 4-1, but they had advantages their pursuers lacked. The warriors who had chosen to follow Marcus were not just running away. They were running toward something new, and that gave them energy and creativity that traditional military thinking could not match. When Krelnax's forces tried to trap them near the asteroid fields of Gamma Serpentis, the rebels used mining explosives to create a debris field that blocked pursuit. When Loyalist ships attempted to cut off their escape route through the Vortex Nebula, they cooperated with local traders to find hidden passages that military maps did not show. They fight like they have nothing to lose, reported Captain Thakmor, who had chosen to stay with Zarath, despite his doubts about her new direction. That is because they fight for something they never had before, Marcus replied from his position on the bridge of Zarath's ship. His bandaged hand still ached, but he had insisted on joining the command crew to help coordinate their escape. They fight for hope. The end came in the Kepler's Edge system, a barren collection of dead planets that marked the boundary between Cytherian space and the unknown regions beyond. Krelnax's fleet finally cornered them there, emerging from hyperspace in perfect battle formation to surround the smaller rebel force. "Attention rebels," Krelnax's voice boomed across all communication channels. "You will surrender immediately and submit to justice for your treason against the Empire. Resistance will result in total destruction." Zarath stood on her bridge staring at the overwhelming force arrayed against them. Krelnax had brought his best ships and most loyal crews. These were warriors who would follow orders without question, who believed absolutely in the righteousness of Cytherian military tradition. "War Duchess," her weapons officer reported, "their guns are powering up. They mean to fire whether we surrender or not." Zarath looked at Marcus, who stood beside her command chair with Solrend hanging at his side. The ancient sword had become his constant companion over the past few days, though he still insisted it belonged to the Cytherian people. "Any suggestions, human?" she asked with bitter humor. Marcus studied the tactical display showing the enemy positions. His mind raced through possibilities, but every scenario ended in disaster. They were completely outgunned and outnumbered. Traditional military logic said they had no chance of survival, but Marcus had never been traditional. "Open a channel to all ships," he said quietly. "Both ours and theirs." "What are you planning?" Zarath asked. "Something that has never been tried before," Marcus replied. "Trust me." The communication system crackled to life, broadcasting Marcus's voice to every vessel in the system. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of Earth," he began. "I am speaking to all warriors present, both those who follow me and those who serve Supreme War Duke Krelnax. On the Loyalist ships, confused officers looked at each other. Why was the human addressing them directly instead of negotiating with their commander? "3 days ago I had the honor of being tested by the ancient sword Solrend," Marcus continued. "That blade taught me something important about strength. True power is not the ability to destroy your enemies. True power is the ability to make your enemies into friends." Krelnax's angry voice cut across the channel. "Silence. I will not listen to this human propaganda." But Marcus kept talking. "I know that many of you joined the military to protect your people and serve your empire. I respect that dedication, but ask yourselves this question. What are you really protecting by destroying those who seek a better way?" On several of the Loyalist ships, younger crew members began to murmur among themselves. They had heard stories about what happened at Thyros Prime, whispered accounts of the human who had endured Solrend's trial and spoken of strength without conquest. "You see rebels when you look at us," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through space. "But we see ourselves as explorers. We want to find new ways to serve the Cytherian people, new ways to expand their influence and ensure their prosperity. We do not reject your traditions. We want to build upon them." Zarath watched her sensor displays with amazement. Several of the Loyalist ships were powering down their weapons. Not all of them, but enough to matter. Krelnax noticed the same thing. "All ships fire immediately," he commanded. "Destroy these traitors before their poison spreads further." But the response was not what he expected. Less than half of his fleet obeyed the order. The others hesitated, their crews torn between duty and curiosity about what the rebels might accomplish if given the chance. "This is mutiny," Krelnax raged. "This is choice," Marcus corrected gently. "Your people are choosing for themselves what kind of future they want to build." The space around Kepler's Edge filled with weapons fire, but it was confused and scattered. Ships that had been united minutes before were now divided, some firing on the rebels while others held back or even turned to defend them. In the chaos, Marcus did something that no military commander would have considered. He ordered his ship to move directly toward Krelnax's flagship, transmitting on all frequencies as he approached. "Supreme Warduke," he called out, "I challenge you to single combat, not to defeat you but to show you the difference between fighting for conquest and fighting for protection." The challenge sent shockwaves through both fleets. Single combat was an ancient Kytherian tradition, one that even Krelnax could not legally refuse. "You dare challenge me, human?" Krelnax's voice was filled with rage and disbelief. "I challenge the ideas you represent," Marcus replied. "If I can show you a better way, will you listen?" The answer came not in words but in action. Krelnax's personal fighter launched from his flagship, weapons armed and ready for battle. Marcus responded by leaving Zareth's ship in a small shuttle, carrying only Solrend and his convictions. The two craft met in the empty space between the opposing fleets. Every warrior in the system watched as the human and the Supreme Warduke faced each other in the ultimate test of their philosophies. But when the moment came to fire, Marcus did something unprecedented. Instead of attacking, he shut down his weapons and opened his shuttle's bay doors, making himself completely vulnerable. "I will not fight you," he broadcast, "because you are not my enemy. You are a warrior who believes he is protecting his people. I respect that, even if I disagree with your methods." Krelnax's fighter circled the defenseless shuttle like a predator stalking prey, but as he prepared to fire, something stopped him. This human had done the impossible before. What if he was about to do it again? "What are you?" Krelnax asked, his voice carrying a mixture of frustration and wonder. "Someone who believes there is always a better way," Marcus replied. "Even now, when everything seems impossible, I believe we can find a solution that serves everyone's needs." The ancient sword at Marcus's side began to glow with the same light it had shone during his trial on Thyrus Prime. But this time, the energy did not burn. Instead, it spread outward like gentle sunlight, touching every ship in the system. The effect was immediate and profound. Every warrior present, whether rebel or loyalist, felt a moment of perfect clarity. They saw through each other's eyes, understood each other's fears and hopes. For just an instant, they all experienced what Marcus had discovered during his trial with Solrend. True strength came not from defeating others, but from understanding them. When the light faded, the space around Kepler's edge was silent except for the soft hum of ship engines. Weapon systems across both fleets had been powered down. Warriors who had been ready to kill each other moments before were now looking at their displays with new eyes. "This changes everything," Krelnax whispered. "No," Marcus replied gently. "This is just the beginning." The confrontation that should have ended in death and destruction instead became the foundation of something unprecedented in galactic history. The Kytherian Empire did not fall, but it evolved. Those who wanted to continue the old ways of conquest and expansion were free to do so, but they were joined by others who chose to explore Marcus's path of cooperation and mutual benefit. The split was not violent or angry. It was simply a recognition that there were multiple ways to be strong, multiple ways to serve one's people, and multiple paths to a better future. Zareth became the first war duchess of what would eventually be called the Kytherian Cooperative, leading expeditions to make peaceful contact with alien species and establish mutually beneficial relationships. Krelnax, changed by his encounter with Solrend's ancient wisdom, reformed the traditional military to focus more on protection and less on conquest. Marcus returned to Earth carrying news of the first alien alliance in human history. But more importantly, he carried proof that sometimes the greatest victories came not from being the strongest, but from helping others become strong too.